And now I'm going to bring up our second guest, ladies and gentlemen, Mairead Lavery, who is the Senior Vice President of Business Development at EDC. We gave you a little taste of music there, Mairead.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Catherine.
So clearly, the government's trade agenda is of keen interest to EDC. And I guess we should probably start talking about whether you can talk to us regarding some of EDC's trade initiatives that support that progressive agenda.
Sure. Thanks for that question, Catherine. So absolutely, it's extremely important to us, and what we are very focused on are obviously looking at what the exporter needs are and how we can actually support Canadian companies and our exporters. But the agenda fits in very nicely when you think of some of the capabilities and the areas of growth in Canada. So clean tech's a wonderful example where you have an environmental benefit, so that progressive agenda item of environment linked to a strength, which is our Canadian clean tech companies. So we've been very focused over the last number of years in expanding our support to Canadian clean tech companies. So we have supported in the last 4 years about $3.5 billion worth of business, 170 clean tech companies, exporting to 114 countries in the world. So when Amy mentioned diversification, that's a great example where we're getting really strong Canadian companies out into the market and really helping them grow from being this Canadian expert to being a global enterprise. So clean tech and environment, a huge part of the progressive trade agenda. Also the environment just in general itself. So EDC, one of the actually the first ECA to adopt the OECD standards on coal-fired power stations, where we don't support those anymore. And we continue to evolve that and remove support from areas unless we can see significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. So very clearly on the environment, as it relates to gender issues, women-owned businesses, a key priority for us. There's a very comprehensive ecosystem in Canada, but there are gaps. So what we want to do is go and address where there are gaps and help women-owned businesses actually be able to grow their business internationally. And that's a key focus for us, certainly this last year and moving into this year. One of the other things is how do we also support Indigenous-owned companies, and another areas of focus for us. So clean tech, gender-based decisions, Indigenous peoples, looking at the other groups that perhaps benefit from these, not only the free trade agreements, but the actual agenda itself.
Are there particular markets that are of most interest to your clients?
That's really interesting. I mean, Amy mentioned the statistic, and of course our clients mostly export to the US, but our job is a diversification job. So we have got to get them interested in other markets. Asia Pacific is a huge opportunity. It matches very well the capabilities of Canadian companies, and we have to encourage them. We have to demonstrate how to do business in those countries, give them the tools that they need to do business, and be on the ground to help them. So our agenda has been very focused on growing and representing how you can actually do business in these more challenging and markets that perhaps people don't necessarily think about. So the EDC strategy has actually been to get boots on the ground in these markets. Our 20 offices, in fact, we have none currently in the US, although perhaps we'll have to think a little bit about that as we need to help our exporters remove some of the uncertainty linked to the current negotiations. So give them the knowledge, give them the financing, and help them reduce the risk of getting to those markets. But without a doubt, the growth in Asia Pacific is very easy to actually introduce to our clients. The opportunities are there, and we've got to help them diversify to get there.
So there are nonetheless a lot of ups and downs right now for people in terms of trade in general, NAFTA in particular, but trade in general. You're still bullish on Canadian trade. Why? Because when I meet with Canadian companies, their skill set, their capabilities just match the needs of foreign buyers. There are markets out there, so I'm extremely bullish. I mean, we have invested quite significantly in actually
trying to help Canadian companies find the one thing they need. Guess what that is? A foreign buyer. So we're very focused in getting out into the markets, using the tools we have at our disposal to make relationships with those foreign companies and introduce Canadian companies to them. And when we go through that process, without exception, the foreign buyers say, I didn't realize the talent and the companies that existed in Canada. So they're very, they like the Canadian brand, they like what it stands for. They're very willing to introduce Canadian companies. We have to help them understand what's available, the capability that's available in Canada, and we have to get the Canadian companies perhaps over the hurdle of being able to deal with the risks of working with those foreign buyers. So that's where we're making our significant investment. We have a team of 50 people who I call my favorite words are match.com, and their job is to match Canadian companies to foreign buyers. So that's what we're trying to do to help them with that diversification.
That's fantastic. You probably never thought you'd have high-level matchmaker on your on your resume. Thank you, Mairead.
Thank you.